So I think the big lesson here is that it doesn't have to be hard. Grinding doesn't mean that you don't enjoy it. And I think there's a little bit of a misnomer in our culture around hustle and work and burnout, but also that, people say if you find what you love, you'll never work another day in your life. Well, that's not true. You still have to pay taxes. It's still really hard. You still lose clients. You still, lose deals. But I wanted to circle back to one thing that you said about going viral, which is like, you don't want to go viral on your first video. Everybody wants to make it big fast, but you're not ready for that. I was dumb. I said dumb jokes. I had bad posture. I wasn't prepared for big stages then. And so I had to learn along the way, and I got fired by Billy Idol. I did terrible shows. I got physical.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Conquer the Mind podcast. We got a really special guest today with Mike Montague, the head coach at Sandler Training. Mike is very well accomplished in terms of speaking, public speaking. He's an award-winning speaker. I believe the number is you've spoken in front of over 3,000 different audiences between live, virtual. So if you need some motivation, some public speaking, Mike is definitely your guy. He's hosted podcasts, which we'll probably talk about today, game shows. He's an on-air radio, TV personality. So once Mike starts speaking, you might recognize the voice of maybe someone you've listened to on the radio. He was named one of Kansas City's rising stars of business in 2015. So a really cool accomplishment. And, I said he's the head coach at Sandler. He has been at Sandler Training for, I believe, over 20 years. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike.
Technically, it's been 14 full-time, but it is over 20 years, close to 30 this December, since my dad bought the franchise in Kansas City. So, yeah, I've been a student of Sandler for almost 30 years.
Wow, that's incredible. That's really special. And I know when we were talking previously, kind of like the joke that you have family in franchising or you fall into franchising. So very cool that both of us were very fortunate to have family in franchising. So I understand at Sandler, you started as a student. You worked your way up, you led numerous roles as you're kind of also doing things in the entertainment industry. And now you're the director of community engagement, the head coach of Sandler. So Mike, did I mess up anywhere there? How was the introduction?
I'll fill in some of the gaps in the stories. The introduction was great. I stopped counting the events somewhere at 3,000. So I don't know what it actually is now if we count podcasts and things like that. But I started as a student with my dad and kind of attended classes on and off through my 20s, but I didn't think I could go be a business consultant without any business or sales experience. So besides that, I wanted to be cool and be on the radio. So I was Romeo on Mix 93.3 and 105.1 Jack FM here in Kansas City, and had a lot of fun doing that. DJ'd in bars and clubs and got to open for Billy Idol and Frankie Valli and, DJ a ton of weddings and all that kind of stuff. But I quickly realized that public speaking and business pays a lot more than radio and entertainment stuff. So it was about the time that social media was blowing up in the late 2000s. And so I had an incredible following and learned all the tools, and I designed a bunch of websites along the way and stuff too. So started with social media, wrote a book on LinkedIn for Sandler. And that's how I got the attention of the national audience for Sandler. So I worked for my dad for 5 years as his kind of general manager and trainer and stuff. And then moved up to the home office team to do content marketing and then build online courses, and then hosting the podcast there, How to Succeed podcast. Check that out. There's now over like 650 episodes, 3.5 million downloads, and a ton of cool guests on there. So that's been awesome. And then this year I moved to be the head coach of the home office coaching team, which coaches our other 205 coaches around the world. So it gets very meta at this point. I'm using Sandler on Sandler people, coaching coaches, and trying to help everybody grow their businesses.
No, that's really powerful, Mike. I appreciate you sharing, kind of filling in the missing details. And I really like the point on public speaking and how that pays, and how it sounds like you were kind of like looking at like the long term of your career and kind of looking at, where you want to be and how you can actually get there. I think is really important. I guess I'd be curious in terms of your starting point in your career. A lot of the goal with the podcast help people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, kind of lost, trying to find their why. Very much aligned with some of the things you talk about in your podcast, but also people in like high school, college, in their 20s, just trying to figure life out. It can be very overwhelming, especially you graduate college, you feel like you're supposed to have it all figured out. You get like a business degree, and now you're ready for the business world. But reality is probably could not be further from the truth. Could you talk to me about when you're kind of in your college years, what was the path like? Because you didn't go down the corporate America path right away. You took like the entertainment path, like a very interesting path. It's not like the path that most people grow up thinking about. What was like the mindset, what got you into the entertainment industry originally?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. I don't talk about this part very often, and I did gloss over it. So my mom won a computer in a radio station contest in like 1985. So this was before like everybody had one. And I was like 6 years old or something like that. And back then there were no programs or Windows and stuff. So you had to learn how to program a computer in order to like use the thing. So I was doing that in like grade school. I wrote my first computer program in 8th grade, and then started designing websites in high school. And I started making $50 an hour making websites at my senior year of high school, and kind of did that through college and stuff. But I was like, I don't want to be a computer nerd. Like I went to computer science classes at the University of Missouri, and there were like 500 people in them and like 4 girls. And I was just like, this is not my crowd. I want to be cool. I want to be on the radio. I want to be a DJ. I'd always dreamed about being on the radio since I was in like 5th grade, and used to mess around with my brother and stuff a lot. We would do fake radio stations, and my grandmother and my mom's side of the family are all like entertainers and artsy people, and then my dad are all like salespeople and business people. So I feel like I fell in the middle. But I'm getting to the part, advice for kids. So I made some decisions. One, I was like, I don't want to be stuck in a room behind a computer all day by myself. Like I want to be cool. I want to be out in front of people. I want to be on stage, have fun. And I figured like, if you're going to be like a starving artist or have to break into the entertainment industry, it's better to do that when you have no overhead and no kids and everything when you're young. So another part of the story is they don't give you like afternoon or morning shows on the radio. They don't ask, your band, your garage band to play the Super Bowl. You have to work up to that. So what I always tell young people when I speak at colleges and high schools and stuff is I just never turn down a chance to be behind a microphone. So whether that's now a podcast or a guest appearance or a free speaking engagement or performing for charities, I host game shows for people. But in my radio career, you start with, I was first the weekend prize guy. So I would get to talk for like 20 seconds from a car dealership or something on the weekend. And then I got a slightly less crappy gig, but overnights, like midnight to 5:30. They're like, sure, you can mess up all you want midnight to 5:30. Nobody's listening anyway. And then I got to do the show after Ryan Seacrest on the like America's Top 40 on the weekend and stuff. And then slowly move my way up to a full-time overnight show, and then fill in for nights and afternoons and stuff, and then get my own show. And I think public speaking and stuff is the same way. I encourage people to start podcasts all the time, because the great thing about failing at a podcast is that nobody listens to it. So you're basically failing in the dark, and sometimes quite literally in your closet by yourself. nobody notices. So I feel like taking those kind of swings really, really helps. And then I figured out along the way, if you want to keep doing it, how to make money at it. So, bars and clubs or radio stuff was regular money, but I could make websites on the side because it's not long hours. It's like 4 hours a day that I was doing a show. Or I would get entrepreneurial and do other ventures or start my own podcast. I started an internet radio station that had got up to 30,000 listeners a month. And this was a long time ago. If I had kept that thing, I could have been Joe Rogan by now, because this was like 2007. And sold that at one point when it got too big and the music licenses were costing me more money than I could sell as a salesperson, and I jumped back to the sales training. So I've just kind of always jumped around. And then from radio, I jumped to advertising, because the advertisers sell to the radio stations and they sell the spots, but they also do promotional products and stuff. And as the prize guy, I was interacting a lot with them. And so I just sort of figured out a way to keep making money and get attention and keep getting bigger audiences. And then moving up to the national team here, the corporate headquarters at Sandler, was really a cool opportunity for me. I felt like I grew up listening to David Sandler. I'm sounding really old today, but like cassette tapes and CDs with my dad in the business. And then I'm the voice on the podcasts and the CDs and the recordings and MP3s now. So it really felt like it came full circle for me.
No, that's fascinating, Mike. And some really, really great points there. Really just like taking advantage of all the opportunities presented for you. And I really like the point of like not really focusing on, I feel like we have this idea that like everyone's always judging our every move. You know, we're walking outside, we walk past someone, we're like, what do they think of me? But really, like everyone's focused on themselves. Everyone's living in their own world, especially with podcasting. What I love so much about podcasting, and I really like your point, like everyone should start a podcast. And the beauty about it is like the market really determines like whose podcast is worth listening to. And that's why when you first get started, it really does not matter. It really just matters like, what is your why? Why are you starting the podcast? Because I think the biggest mistake I see with a lot of people that jump headfirst into creating content and podcasting is like, I'm going to blow up. How do I go viral? Like everything's about their own content, but focusing on the person on the other end of the screen. And I think how you can help them. And that's what I think you do such a great job of, is like motivating people, all these like personal development skills, and something that I'm really interested in, because you're at an early age doing all these different things, like the stuff you're talking about, like programming a computer at an early age, building websites, doing entertainment, but also kind of seeing like your father's side on the business side. So a lot of people in college, you know, we have to pay the bills somehow. So we'll get like a bartending job just so we can make enough money to be able to go outside and get drinks.
Yeah.
But for you, you're doing all these different things at once, and, you know, they're paying dividends later on. Were you like conscious in the moment of like trying all these different skills and opportunities, or was it seems like it wasn't just like, I'm going to pay the bills with one thing, because you're doing so many different things that it seems like you didn't necessarily have to do?
Well, I did a lot of things at once. So I am old now, so that list of things that I've done has piled up, but also I did a lot of things at the same time. So I could make $50 an hour building a website and maybe work 8 hours on the weekend and make $400, which means I don't have to make very much as a bartender. I did that in restaurants. And then I moved to hosting karaoke shows. And so in my mind in college, I did think like, if I get a restaurant waiting job, it's basically a mini audience. I get to perform for like 2 to 4 people, you know, dozens of times a night. So can I make them laugh? Can I entertain them? Can I make a great impression so that they bring me another opportunity? And I was doing that and just being silly. And the bartender at the 70s theme restaurant where we, you know, did the YMCA and danced on tables and Thriller and stuff. Yeah. So I was like finding a way to perform, even though I wasn't getting paid for it. And then we started hosting karaoke, and it just happened. The owner of the karaoke company was doing our show because it was right next to her house. And I was messing around with people, you know, telling jokes on the microphone, singing funny songs and trying to be as entertaining as possible. And she's like, you'd be really good at this. I'm like, well, how much does it pay? Being a bartender sucks. Like the hours are bad. Money's bad. Like, what can I do here? And so she got me my first real gig at the casino here. And it's kind of the worst casino in Kansas City. It was called Isle of Capri, and the nickname was Pile of Debris. It was so bad. So there was like 12 people in this like shady, smoky restaurant bar for my first show. And I say all those things because like that's all part of the experience. That's part of being young and doing crazy things. And so I don't know what drove me to do it other than it sounded like fun and something that I wanted to do. And I knew that I had to work my way up. So that karaoke show ran contests, singing contests for radio stations and TV shows. So I got to host Hera's Lucky Break, which was much more classy on TV, and run the soundboard and stuff for that. And then that introduced me to the radio station people, which got me to open for Frankie Valli and then Billy Idol, doing singing contests and DJ stuff. And then I entered a reality show contest and I got second. I'm just telling all my favorite stories today, so stop me anytime. But
no, this is awesome. The audience is going to love this.
So I got second in this contest, and I think it was kind of rigged by the producer of the radio station. But anyway, this other girl won, but the person who came in third place quit their job as the prize guy at another radio station to be in this contest. So I just called up that radio station, was like, hey, I heard you just lost a prize guy. I just lost a contest. Can I get his job? Yeah. And they were like, sure, why not? Because I had already done karaoke shows for them and contests, singing contests and stuff. So I tell all those stories to say that like really it's just about being opportunistic and putting yourself out there and then finding a way to make the money. So along the way, I had to scratch and claw and do different things, or I would find a website gig that paid a bill, or I would, work for the advertising agency for a while, or have different jobs that pay different amounts of money and, find different restaurants, ways to make more money in a shorter period of time. So I could do more of what I liked in entertainment. And I think in general, it all has worked out. You could just kind of climb, but I wanted to circle back to one thing that you said about going viral, which is like, you don't want to go viral on your first video. Everybody wants to make it big fast, but you're not ready for that. I was dumb. I said dumb jokes. I had bad posture. I wasn't prepared for big stages then. And so I had to learn along the way, and I got fired by Billy Idol. I did terrible shows. I got physically assaulted. I got maced by police. Like a lot of bad thing happens along the way that makes you a bulletproof performer by the time you actually do make it. I think it's supposed to be that way.
No, I think that's a really great point. And like, if you do go viral on your first post, like then what are they supposed to do? You have no other content for them to look at. It's kind of
yeah, you have no offers built up. You have no courses to sell or books to sell or anything. And it doesn't help anyway. I have a lot of friends and have interviewed a lot of people that have gone viral, and they're like, yeah, it got me a few followers and stuff, but it goes away as fast as it comes that way. If you build a long, stable career, it's really hard to go away. It would be hard for me to go jobless now at this point, because I've done so many different things for so many different people and helped them out, where if you do flash and go viral right away, it can flash and go away that fast too.
No, and I think that's a really great point. And as you bring up the word like jobless, being unemployable, I always think like it's all about like this ongoing, like I say, there's kind of like two paths: stability or growth. People that are on this path of growth, learning, personal development, as I see you doing, like every day, you're learning new skills. That allows you to become this like unemployable person, because you get fired somewhere, you have all these different skill sets that you can apply somewhere else. But I'm so curious, because nowadays for someone like myself, I can go to YouTube, I can look at someone that's like, the best of the best at whatever I'm interested in, and then I can literally like study them. But 19 whatever, like you're saying, like you had to design a computer, so I'm guessing you probably couldn't just search things up like that easily. How are you like proactively learning all these skills at a young age?
It's a good question there too. I would say I do exactly what you do too. I think people that learn and grow now, I watch a ton of YouTube videos. I read a ton of books. I was writing a book on playful cultures and kind of how to have the most fun and fulfillment in your life and career. And so I read the top like 35 books on the subject, and I watched all the YouTube videos, all the TED Talks I could find and stuff like that. I think early in the career, it was interesting. I think you find mentors and people that you want to be like, or people that you think do a good job, and you kind of develop your own voice from there. So
Hmm.
I always still to this day, when I have a big speech coming up and I'm at like HubSpot Inbound or something, and there's gonna be 10,000 people there, I'll watch people like Steve Martin or Adam Sandler's, stand-up comedy special, and be like, all right, what are they doing? Like, get me in the mood, get me in that mindset. Let me see how they're doing. What is the cutting edge artists and performers doing, and what's catching people's attention now? And especially with this type of stuff, either social media or content marketing and things, the style changes so much. So probably back in the 90s, it was mostly books, recordings, and stuff that you could see on TV. So I loved listening to the Sandler cassette tapes and recordings, and reading all the books that I could find on business. And now it's really a lot more micro content, and you can search and find answers, or ask ChatGPT a question and get it so much faster. I think the key is what you said, though. It's really just curiosity and figuring it out along the way. I forget who said the quote now, but if you're waiting for all green lights on the road to success, like it's not going to happen. You're never going to get started. So you just go, and when you hit a red light or detour, you just, like a GPS, recalculate. You're like, all right, well, that didn't work out. Turns out I hated being on the radio. I made the analogy earlier. I didn't want to be a nerd and sit in a room on a computer by myself all day. Guess what being on the radio is? Sitting in a dark, soundproof room behind a computer, playing music that somebody else scheduled. The computer's already scheduled out for your whole 4 hours. And so you're just waiting around for about 10 minutes to say 30 seconds worth of something funny over an intro of a song. And then maybe one phone line flashes in the corner, and it's your buddy who was on the way to work, and it's like, hey man, that one was funny. And you're like, all right, thanks. Glad somebody liked it. And then you go back to sitting around trying to think of something funny for another 10 minutes. And so it was just a really miserable, kind of lonely job. I loved live entertainment so much more. And I think I've learned that in working remotely and other places too. You're just like, oh no, okay, this was the right move at the time, or this felt like a step forward, but now it's not going any further. I got to find another direction to take that next step. And that's okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice, and something I've fallen victim to as well, where I end up working really hard for something. Then once you kind of accomplish that, you realize, well, this is not really the day in the life that I was looking for. This is not the type of person I was looking to interact with. And very similar to when you're looking at franchising, think about, seniors, children, be the B, be the C. Who's the type of person you actually want to be dealing with? Not just do you want to be a business owner, but who do you actually like interacting with? And then I think that daily advice, whether you're looking at a job or a franchise opportunity, luckily in franchise, you can actually speak to other franchise owners through validation, figure out what that day in the life looks like. But if you're even just applying to jobs, whatever age you are, I would encourage you, look at people on LinkedIn that are in a similar position to where you want, not even reaching out, asking for a job, but just ask for 15 minutes of their time. Most people are very willing to talk about themselves. So just allow them to learn about their experiences, learn about their day in the life, so that you don't spend 5-10 years working towards something like a lot of us have, and I have too. Then you realize that's not where you want to be. Then you have to totally readjust and pivot. So I think those are great points. Do you want to add anything, Mike?
Yeah, I do. I have several things to add on when it comes to franchising. One is personality style. So what you're hearing from me so far in this podcast is I was chasing things that were jobs that were meant for me, right? So some people are not meant for franchising. Like, they want to build it all themselves. They have a very specific thing. They don't follow rules well. They don't like systems and processes. Like, this is not for you, and that's okay. Or they're not really cut out to be a business owner because they don't like to sell, or they're not comfortable with risk and stuff. And all of that is okay. Then you need to find a business or a job that's safer, doesn't have risk, and doesn't have sales involved, right? Go into a different thing. I think also what people find is that in different career sets and times, there are times where you don't want to take those risks. If you haven't figured it out, if you don't know what your passion is, a franchise can actually be a safer bet because they have all those systems and things set up for you. You don't have to spend 10 years building a business to find out that it's not what you want to do. Like you can get into that business much faster and it might cost you more money up front, but you're shortening that learning curve dramatically and you're getting to where you want to go. So I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on this too, but especially when I look at the sales training franchise that we have for Sandler is I notice several things. One is there are some people that are just born to do this. This is what they were looking for. My dad was one of those. He saw a short advertisement in an airplane magazine in '94 and was like, yes, I'm all in. I love this. Like he loved the psychology. He was a born salesperson. He loves networking. He is very scattered and not detailed or structured at all. So the fact that they already made all the material and content and had the business set up was perfect for him. It was like a hack and a shortcut. We also find people that are the opposite of that, right? They love putting together all the structure and detail and everything, and they hate the networking and selling part of it and go, well, maybe a sales training franchise is not for you.
Right.
I've also seen people think that like they're the genius, and so they want to go and create it all, which is fine. I've done that several times in my career. You want to start from scratch, or you want to express yourself versus somebody else's content, then maybe this isn't for you. But if you really want to help people and make an impact and you want that shortcut for you, then this can be a really great opportunity. And sometimes people grow out of it too, which I think I would love to hear your opinion on, which is you don't have to own the business forever either. I think you mentioned when people think about what do you want to do for your living, it's a permanent answer that you can only get one choice. But on average, people have 7 jobs in their career, 7 to 9 jobs. And for young people like yourself, I saw an awesome research study that showed that half of those jobs don't exist yet. Like being a podcaster wasn't a thing when I graduated high school, or I would have done that. Right. So I think, when you're thinking of like, what do I want to do when I'm 80? That's a pretty dumb question. Why don't you figure out what you want to do now? And then if you outgrow a franchise and you're like, you know what, I learned everything I need to know about business. I can do this. I want to go start another one on my own, then start a second business or hand it over to an operator or sell it off and go do your next venture. You can use this to level up along the way. And I don't think there's one right answer for your purpose, your why, or anything. The best advice I've heard on my podcast is a lady that ran for president. She was like runner up in Miss America, and an incredibly awesome lady. And she said that your why is actually a how. Like people keep thinking, and we always ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? A better question is, how do you want to be when you grow up? Okay, well, I want to be a fun, entertaining, outgoing, lifelong learner. I can do that in a variety of different jobs. Then I'm not looking for a what anymore. It's like, okay, how do I want to spend my time? Who do I want to spend it with? They're better questions.
No, I think that's really powerful. And this was funny because this was something I've been actually thinking about too, because Simon Sinek wrote the book, like Start With Why. And I've always had that understanding, like start with why, but I realized like I have my why, I want to help people with the financial freedom, the lifestyle freedom, and the impact. But how are you going to do that is like a totally different story. And I want to say the why is something that kind of like comes along the process, but the how can be like, it's almost like a trying game, like trial and error. You have to try all these different things to figure out what is the how that you want to go down to, which eventually leads to the what. So I think that's very interesting. And I completely agree with your point. With kind of like franchising, it doesn't need to be like your final destination. I think someone that I heard, it's a pretty funny analogy where it's like a wedding with or a marriage with a really good exit strategy. But I think the point is like when you get into franchising, that does not need to be like your step 100. Like everyone I've had on my podcast as well, all where they are today, they would not have guessed it in their 20s. They did not have it all figured out. They just kept trying new things, which is really the big differentiator. A lot of us are waiting for things to happen rather than proactively making things happen. And the cool thing about franchising is that they're going to equip you with all the different skills so that whether you want to eventually start your own business, end up building a real estate portfolio, or maybe you do want to go back to corporate America and just use a franchise as a supplement stream. Like there's so many different opportunities. I think the goal is like with franchising, if you are someone that wants to have that control, have control over your lifestyle, franchising provides a really solid route so that you can start living life on your own terms. And a lot of people, they want to find something they're passionate about. Well, being a business owner gives you all the stuff so that you can find that passion project that you want to pursue. But it really starts with having the finances, living the life you want, and having that strong impact on other people. So I think these are all really great points, Mike, and go for it.
Another analogy I like to use there is like a video game character where I'm going to go collect these like merit badges or put things in my backpack and stuff. And franchise is like finding a really cool treasure trove of tools that are already built for you that you get to put in your backpack. So it's like a cheat code to help you level up. And so I think that's the way I try to design my life and career is like, what do I want my next mission to be? Not like, what is this whole video game all about? Like, it's an easier question. And then if I go over here and I do this thing and I build this website for the Kansas City Chiefs, is that going to get me more merit badges, more credibility, more life force? Like, is it going to be draining or not? And I'm asking myself those types of questions as like, is it going to help me level up the character I'm playing here? Not, is that what I want to do for the rest of my life? Or is it going to pay enough in the short term? I'm looking at a lot of different factors, and I think about it as little different side quests and stuff that I can do to just have fun and break up what I'm doing in the career.
No, I think that's really powerful. Just kind of enjoying the journey and not necessarily focusing so much on that final destination. Like, I've spent a lot of my life trying to figure out where I want to be in a couple of years and then getting mad that you're not there right now. But reality is, like, wherever you are right now is exactly where you're supposed to be. It's a result of your actions, your thoughts, how you're programmed, and you can change that. But what are you going to do today to change that? I think is really important part. But Mike, one thing I really want to dive into, because I think in franchising, as I said, you fall in or you have family in franchising. We're both very lucky to have family in franchising. But I feel like a lot of times, growing up, you watched the show Bar Rescue growing up?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like, I feel like it's always like families running restaurants and it's just a total mess. Like, everything goes wrong. But in my opinion, I see a lot of very successful families in franchising as opposed to independent business ownership. Can you kind of dive into like your perspective a little bit as someone that you saw your father in Sandler in business? What I know for myself, I saw my father in dry cleaning, in franchising, but I still, part of me like felt kind of discredited if I went the same path. I felt like I had to go my own path to a certain extent. But if I could do it all over again, I'd be all in with like my father's path and just trying to observe as much as you can and taking advantage of those opportunities. What was kind of like the mindset of like, did you want to go into business with your father? Were you kind of hesitant? What were kind of like the strengths, the challenges along the way of that?
Well, I feel like I'm giving you really long answers today, and there's a lot to unpack there. But I don't get to be the guest very often, so usually I'm the one asking the question. So I'll go for it.
I've got to stop you because that's so funny. That's what happened to me when you were interviewing me. I was like going on and on and on. I rewatched it. I was like, oh my God, I can't listen to myself. Sometimes you were asking questions that I would realize I went so off topic, I didn't get to the answer of your question. So I like everything you're saying, Mike. I think the stories are very helpful. So if you want to go on a tangent, by all means.
So a few things came to mind here. One is, I think when we're talking about multi-generational businesses, and we coach a lot of them at Sandler too as our clients, so I've seen this a lot. It depends on whether, you usually have two different parents, like a critical parent and a nurturing parent. Those can be whichever ones. But if you're matching that personality style of the parent who is the business owner, it, I think, is a lot easier, and you kind of have those same skill sets and they're there. What we see a lot though is that children are kind of the opposite of their parents sometimes. And you're like, okay, no, that parent was a dominant voice and a big character in business, so I took a back role of like supporting that. And I was kind of that way with my dad. He again was like this. He's 6'4". He's a big, huge, loud, charismatic, like salesperson. He was always wearing a suit growing up and everything. And just that typical, like, big voice and character in the room. And I have some of that, but I also wasn't that salesperson. He spent 20 years in outside sales before he bought a Sandler franchise. I, coming into the business, didn't spend 20 years in outside sales. So I'm not the same person with the same circumstance. And I think that sometimes that can line up. So I would caution people to say that, like, a lot of times when kids graduate college, this happens too. When they buy their first house, they try to buy a house the same size and stuff as what they just left with their parents' house. But your parents worked for like 20, 30 years to get that house. They didn't start there. They had a starter house. They owned something before. And so people get ahead of themselves and they think, oh, I can just shortcut this. And I think especially in family-owned businesses, you have to decide, like, did you grow up in this business? Is it a restaurant where you're like, I've been making pizzas in the back since I was, too young to work, since I was 10 years old. I know this business in and out and stuff. Or is this like a complicated engineering thing where you need to go to engineer, you need to school, like get an advanced degree, or a doctor's office? Like, you can't just walk in and be like, oh, well, my dad was a doctor here, I get to be a doctor too. No, you have to go do the hard work that they did in order to keep it running. And I think that's really interesting. There is also something to be said, though, that businesses evolve over time. And so an entrepreneur who starts a business from scratch is different from an operator who can keep it going. So sometimes that second generation is better equipped for the business, because that's where I was like, my dad was a great entrepreneur, but he did not have those systems and processes in place to make it scalable, to hire other people into the business. Like, the accounting and the books and building everything was a mess. And he could sell people and he could train them, and he's an amazing coach. So I give my father all the credit in the world for what he does, but there's certain things that he doesn't do. And so I treated it more like I was going to be the general manager of this business rather than an entrepreneur startup salesperson. And so I hope that helps people out there, because it's completely dependent on who you and your family are, and what type of business it is, and the age of the business, and the experience required to get into it.
Yeah, no, I think that's important, that every situation is a little bit differently, and kind of whether you're looking at franchising or relationships, I always say, like, the key to success is managing expectations. Is that something where, like, right when you guys started, you were like, all right, this is your skill set, this is my skill set, this is what a day in life's going to look like, this is what a week's going to look like? It wasn't just like, all right, you're working for me, like, let's get going. You guys were like very clear on priorities and responsibilities, it sounds like.
Yeah, you're asking some of my favorite questions, and these are going deep today. So about working with family, there's a couple of things I would say. Yes, we did have that up front. It was really funny. My ex-wife was in there and helped me, like, negotiate the contract of, like, salaries and stuff, and was like, no, we're putting this on paper and we're working it out. He did know that I had different skill sets because of what I had been doing with internet marketing and other stuff. He was like, I need this as part of the business. I also need a trainer and public speaker, and I need somebody that can set up the systems and processes. So we both knew that going in. The other thing I love about working with family, people always ask if it's hard, and I don't know if you found this, but I know his things, his annoying things and weird picadillos and stuff. Like, I've lived with my whole life, and I'm going to live with, for the rest of my life. So it's sort of a different level of acceptance of, like, he knows what my weaknesses are, and when I'm, distracted, or what triggers me emotionally and stuff. So very rarely would those get crossed. And if it did, we could still yell at each other. I could tell my boss off and still keep my job, which is a great fun thing you don't get in other roles. But I think we kind of knew going in that when you love each other, it's unconditional, and you're trying to figure it out, and you're both doing things for the right reasons. Like, even when he's challenging me, it's because he wants me to get better, wants me to be successful in this business. It's a different level of acceptance than I've gotten in any other job from any other boss, really. And so that was the magical part of it. My sister was in the business at the same time too, and spending 5 years with my dad and sister building something cool was really special and really fun. And it was nice to leverage each one of our things and just be like, look, this is not you. This is a me thing, or this is a not me. I need you to take this one. My sister is super loving, and she's even more nurturing and stuff than I am. So it's like asking her to do collections for people that are overdue on their bills is not the job for her, right? Like she'll welcome everybody, she'll onboard clients, she makes them all feel loved and invited, and setting up the holiday parties and all of the loving on people that we need to do in our business. She's perfect for being bad cop. And kicking somebody out of a class, or asking them to pay their bills, or doing something that takes more confrontation is not her thing, and that's okay. So really, I think it goes back to that understanding and that commitment then to the overall vision and success of everybody together. That was really fun.
No, I think that's really interesting. And I was just curious, as someone that I've gone down different industries, different career paths, you stack these wins and it's awesome. But there's something like really special since being in the same industry as, my father, when you can like communicate everything, the stuff you're talking about, he can relate to, the stuff he's talking about, you can relate to. And I want to slowly dive into the Playful Humans podcast, because I think it kind of ties into this utmost fulfilling with tying in work and passion. I think a lot of times as an entrepreneur, you're on this very lonely, isolated journey, but it's very different in franchising, having this team by your side. But having family is like this very special thing. And I think it really ties into the generational wealth strategies that most people look to franchising for, where you think, all right, I'm just going to hand the next generation this business. But as you said, there are no shortcuts. You do need to learn the business. And I think it goes into generational strategies more being about equipping the next generation with the skills they need, not just handing them this asset, because they could lose money off that asset too. But teaching them all the skills is really like the true generational wealth play, is owning that business and then teaching the next generation the skills needed to also run that business. So I think that's really interesting, Mike. And now I do want to dive into, because I know you started a podcast called the Playful Humans podcast. Can you dive into, just starting for people that have never listened to the podcast, what is like the podcast about? When did you start it? Why did you start it?
I would love to. I did want to circle back to one other thing I forgot, which is super fun, is the money and tax benefits of having your family in a business too, because you talked about some of the different assets and wealth strategies and stuff that you can transfer wealth in a business a lot easier than handing somebody cash. Also, when we have 3 people in the business, family vacations end up as tax write-offs and corporate retreats and stuff, which I'm not sure I should say publicly on a podcast, but we legit are. We're talking about business outside of work. It gives us something to talk about and to keep working on. And so whether it's, around a dinner table or something, it's an awesome kind of connection with your family when you're speaking the same language and doing stuff. But there are some major benefits to having a family business. We'll say there's also some stress sometimes when 3 of our 4 families our incomes were tied to this one business. If you have a bad quarter or something, it can get a little stressful for everybody, but that's okay too. When we all win, 3/4 of our family were in the business. My brother was the only one who didn't, but he did a very similar thing and taught organizational communication in college. He got his PhD in it and stuff. So we still all nerded it out and talked about it when we got together. Now, Playful Humans is another family thing for me. So we talked a lot about it up front, but my family always had this, what we called creative nerdery, where we would just go do something silly and try and make people laugh. So at my grandma's house, we would go back and like get toy instruments and try and like make up a song and then come out and sing it for our parents, or we'd record different, radio shows, or use the video camera to create a little short film or something. And we're always just being nerds and trying to be creative and make stuff. And in my career, I realized that there are several different ways that playfulness is a huge advantage. And I think there's enough people talking about hustle and grind. And so sure, there is a certain amount of effort. Even in my entertainment career, I told you I had to show up over and over again, thousands and thousands of times, sometimes at bad gigs, sometimes for one person in the audience, or less than 10 people. And there is a certain amount of behavior involved in success. Like you do have to show up, you do have to hustle, you have to try. But I think sometimes people think play is the opposite of work, that if you're playing, you're not working at something. And that's not true. Sloth, laziness, binge watching Netflix is the opposite of work. That won't help you succeed in your life and career. But play is different. Play is like the fun uncle of work. It's a tangential thing where I always found a ton of value in my playful pursuit. So if I'm in, business at Sandler doing sales and leadership coaching and business development consulting for people, when I have a podcast and I interview people who play for a living on Playful Humans, I'm talking to DC Glenn from Tag Team, who did the song Whoomp There It Is. And I'm learning about how he hustles and how he got the Super Bowl commercial with the sprinkles and stuff that was voted like commercial of the year and things. And so I'm learning things about business and networking from him, or how a magician books gigs or gets on America's Got Talent and stuff. You're learning about marketing and positioning and branding. And so I'm not just playing around and telling silly dad jokes on the podcast. I'm actually learning through this playful pursuit. And you can take that to a whole ton of different types of play. So I have a quiz on my website called playfulhumans.com/quiz. And there's 10 different personality types. So if you like puzzles and games, that's a cool way to work your mind and to do creative problem solving. You might like telling jokes and being charismatic, or you might like social events where you're the producer of a party and you're going to host a 2-hour cocktail party, which is a great book by a guy I had on my podcast too. Check out the 2-hour cocktail party, because we did one last night and it was awesome. Super fun. Learned a ton about some really cool people. And again, having a cocktail party sounds like play, but this was full of executive leaders from some of the top businesses in Kansas City, guys that had exits for over $160 million in their business. And I got to talk to them about how they did it, how they came up with the evaluation and all that kind of stuff, like how they got collected pitches and how they handled it when a big offer came in after the deadline and all kinds of stuff. So I learned a ton while eating some really great food and having drinks with some cool people and telling funny stories from our childhood and stuff in different mixer games. So I think the big lesson here is that it doesn't have to be hard. Grinding doesn't mean that you don't enjoy it. And I think there's a little bit of a misnomer in our culture around hustle and work and burnout, but also that, people say, if you find what you love, you'll never work another day in your life. Well, that's not true. You still have to pay taxes. It's still really hard. You still lose clients. You still, lose deals. And there's days where you just, it doesn't work for whatever reason. But I think that there are lots of ways to make money by playing. Athletes get paid millions of dollars to play, right? You play politics. Those people get paid pretty well. Like there are ways to play and get paid at the same time and enjoy what you're doing. And so all those wrapped into one is kind of the pursuit I've been on since the pandemic.
No, that's really powerful. And I guess with the journey, kind of finding the play, having fun with what you're doing, then also getting paid to do so. For a lot of people listening, they're like, well, how the heck do I even do that? What strategies do you have for someone? I think right now probably more focused on probably middle of their career, 30s, 40s, 50s, still trying to figure out how do I accomplish that? They're in a corporate career, they're getting paid, they're able to pay the bills, their family's able to go on a vacation once a year, but there's still not that true sense of fulfillment. As you're kind of talking about some of your family experiences, they're not really experiencing some of those similar things. How does someone go about, what are those steps to actually changing their life so that they too can, and I know this is a very difficult question, so I'm curious.
No, I have some answers for you here, because I think people ask the wrong question. So I am very much an improv yes and kind of person, or I think it can also be both or neither, right? Where you don't have to get all of your fulfillment from one job, people mess that up all the time. And so you've heard from my story today, but while I'm working at Sandler and we're doing some really big business challenges and we have over 200 franchise locations I'm trying to coach and manage, and we're growing a huge, international company and worrying about foreign translations and a lot of detailed, really complicated stuff. At the same time, I auditioned and I got a job hosting game shows for a company out of California and then one here in Kansas City, where at night, after a long, hard day of work, I would go host Family Feud, Price is Right, Wheel of Fortune for, corporate events, families and get-togethers, and just go have fun and make people laugh. And again, go with the silly dad jokes and stuff, and just do the complete opposite. And so I think there are a lot of ways that if you can work them together and you can find times in your job, like you and I do with hosting the podcast, where this is my time to learn, engage. I'm not trying to be productive. It's non-focused. It gives me a different kind of energy. I think that's big. So I look at energy management versus time management, and I try to look at how do I get the pieces of what I need rather than trying to find it all in one place. So maybe sometimes you do things for money. Maybe sometimes you do it for fun and fulfillment. Sometimes you do it just to practice and learn, or to try something new, or stretch your comfort zone, or just because you want to. So I'm writing a book for Playful Humans. It'll come out here pretty soon, but there's 5 P's that I try to think about all the time for what a nice balance looks like. And balance is a misnomer because nothing's ever balanced. So you got to kind of swing back and forth between these. But we need time to perform, to get paid for what we're doing, be at our best, do the work. We also need time to practice. So if you're only performing all the time, you're not getting better at what you do. So sometimes you need stuff that's like low risk, low income, just time to practice a skill and get better. We're all humans, which means we have to rest. So pause is the 3rd P. We need time to pause, just think about what we're doing. So that's ponder is number 4. But time to rest and recover physically, time to ponder and think about, are we even doing the right thing? This is working on the business instead of in the business. And then we also need time for play, just to re-energize and do things that give us spiritual fulfillment. And I think if you're finding all of those things at different times, those are great. So you might take a class on a weekend, take a cooking class and learn something, or to practice something, or buy an online course for your business that'll help you figure out how to do social media marketing or start a podcast or something. Sandler is great for this because we give you a lot of time to role play and practice your sales skills or your leadership coaching conversations and stuff. And so we can get better. The time to think is one that I think is missing a ton in our culture these days, and the play. So I think a lot of people perform and we spend way too much time thinking about that. I think not enough people practice, pause, ponder, or just play.
No, that's really powerful, Mike. And I'm taking a lot of notes on this. I try to take everything and try to figure out how I can implement it into my own life personally. And I know that hours were winding down as I'm realizing I have so many more questions, and even just based upon that. But I think kind of like a final question or so as we kind of wind down our time, I'm hearing perform, practice, pause, ponder, and play. So we have like all those things, and trying to balance all of them is kind of like the difficulty. And one of the things you mentioned is managing your time, your energy can be a difficulty. As you go about those 5 Ps, would you say that's something that you're looking at like on a daily basis? Like you need to perform, practice, reflect daily? Or is it like, every Sunday, like once a week, that's when you kind of like reflect? Or, how do you kind of like look at those 5 Ps? Is it something where you need to take time out daily, proactively, or what would your best practices be to kind of implement those 5 Ps?
Yeah, I love that question too. I think checking in daily with your own energy level and just mind, body, and spirit. Like, do I have it today? Am I rested physically? Is my spirit uplifted? Do I feel confident and good about myself? That's the U triangle in Sandler is mind, body, and spirit. There's also a some natural breaks. So I think it does make sense weekly or monthly to really look at these of like what is draining me long term that maybe I'm not feeling in the moment. It's hard to fit all 5 into every single day. So there's days where I'm on stage hosting a conference and I'm spending 8 hours literally performing or 12 hours being on and networking, that when I'm done, it's like I just crash and I'm exhausted. And after 2 or 3 days of the Sandler Summit, I have to take a whole week to recover and do something, maybe just read a book and rest, or just, sleep and lay by the pool or something. So each day doesn't really work. I found there are going to be days where you're going to get overloaded or you want to do that. You're on vacation, you want to play all day. So you're not doing any work and stuff. But I think when you spread those out, looking long-term, in regular check-ins, like journaling with yourself or doing regular goal setting exercises every quarter or at least every year on your birthday or New Year's, resetting and going, what am I missing here out of these 5? Where am I not getting fulfilled? Or when you find yourself drained and burnt out and you're just like, I don't have it today, looking at those will give you the answer to why, right? What am I missing there that is not allowing me to live my best life, and which ingredient is a little out of whack in this recipe?
That's really powerful. I really relate to all of that. I think those are some very helpful points for the podcast listeners. And I know that our time is winding down. So typically I do like a final review of the podcast, kind of like my final takeaways.
Yeah.
So very quickly, I say very quickly, and I usually end up talking for like 5 minutes. But
right.
I really like just the idea of, you're in 8th grade, high school, you're programming, you're building websites. I always want to emphasize, like, start as early as you can, learning as many skills as you can. It just allows you to be this word unemployable, jobless. Like, no matter what, you have that control over your future when you can do all these different skills. Like building a website, you can always find someone that needs a website. There's so many companies now that still don't have a website. So the more skills you learn, the more you can kind of implement this. And sales, like, number one skill I'd recommend to anyone. If you can build relationships, you can speak to anyone, because any company really is based upon sales and revenue. So if you're bringing in revenue to the company, you're probably going to be one of the last people that would be let go of a company if there were like a downturn or an economy like that. I also like, Mike, you just took chances throughout your whole career. Like, you saw opportunity, you took advantage of it. I think nowadays, a lot of us suffer from analysis paralysis. There's so many different ways to get wealthy. We see crypto, NFTs, real estate. We see all these different things nowadays. And we feel like we just want to wait for like that perfect opportunity. But there really is never a perfect opportunity. The only perfect opportunity is taking advantage of what's in front of you. And then those multiple perfect opportunities seem to arise from those people. But it was learning all these skills, taking advantage of different opportunities. And I like how when you're a waiter or you're kind of like trying to make your way into the entertainment industry, you have like these small gigs that weren't really entertainment gigs, but you're trying to find a way to build a platform, build a brand, and really just all these small things in your life. Take advantage of every opportunity. You never know where it will take you. And let's say you are a business owner down the road. That's when you need responsibility for all these different things. So if you were responsible for it when it was a smaller task, it'll be a lot easier when you're a business owner. And also, just some of the most successful people have a really strong curiosity curve. I can see, like, you have multiple podcasts interviewing so many different people. Like, you're always on like this ongoing growth, learning, always trying to learn new things. And then lastly, but no shortcuts in life. You're always going to have to learn different ways. Even if you have family in something, you still need to learn everything. It will probably help fast track the path for you, but you still need to learn everything that they did before you. And finally, I just want to dive into those 5 Ps again with perform, practice, pause, ponder, and play. I totally agree with you on like the ponder aspect and the pause. Nowadays with thinking, that's something that's really neglected. And it kind of goes to like, you wake up, you open your phone, you scroll through social media, you put on the politics, Bloomberg. There's so many different things happening. It's hard to just wake up and say, how can I focus in on myself? So just my like tactical advice to anyone, when you first wake up, don't make picking up your phone the first thing. Spend even if it's just 5 minutes, check in on yourself, focus in on yourself, your daily goals. What do you want to accomplish? And that's the point
Journal
that
with a pencil is a great time for that too. Just get your thoughts at the
Mm,
beginning and end of the day. It'll help you sleep better, and it'll really help you like think
mm,
clearly on those
yeah.
for sure.
And my final point, Mike, that really hit home is just checking in with yourself daily on that point. That's something that I think is really important. You can have so many good days. You never know when it's going to change. And, I do meditation, I do yoga, and all these like morning rituals like really help me throughout the day. So I think it's just really important, even if you are someone in a really good place, really just checking in with yourself, because I always say like life's really short. You never know when the final buzzer will going to ring. So just knowing where you want to be in life so that you're always proactively on that journey rather than kind of second guessing yourself. So Mike, any final words? I really appreciate you today. This was awesome.
You nailed it. I'll leave it there. Thanks for having me on, Josh. Really great questions. I think we hit some really important stuff, and we've already talked about all the podcast call to actions and everything. So if you want a Sandler franchise, call Josh or reach out to Sandler.com, and we'll help you there. Other than that, you know where to find me. So I'll see you on the other side.
And Mike, I'm going to put all your information in the bio as well as your podcast as well. So if anyone's interested, definitely subscribe to those podcasts. You're going to learn a lot. I've listened myself. It's filled with wisdom, education. So if you're someone on this path of growth, definitely tune into Mike's podcast. So Mike, thank you so much for tuning in. If you made it to the end of the episode, like I hope you did, like, share, comment, subscribe, share, help out the algorithm. Thank you everyone for tuning in.